not alone.
But they're on my computer, so I'm not going to do any slides.
When you're sad,
it's okay. I'd like to begin by just talking about some big picture concepts.
Absolutely, Doctor.
And then we will go into minutia, as much minutia as you want. So Professor Alessio Fasano at Harvard, he is the professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, a professor of nutrition at the Harvard School of Public Health, the chief pediatric gastroenterology, Mass General Hospital at Harvard, the director of the Mucosal Immunology Center at Harvard, the director of the Celiac Research Center at Harvard. Any one of these positions is a lifelong goal for any person at the top of their field. And he has so many of them. We think he's going to win the Nobel Prize one day. We truly do. Because this is the man, he and his team identified the mechanism that causes leaky gut. And he identified that back in 1997. The protein called zonulin, that's the name of the protein. And his team has been publishing papers on this ever since. So a man at that level of education in the world, he's always careful of everything he says because he can be misquoted very, very easily.
Of course.
So his new paper that came out earlier this year, the man who always is very careful of what he says, the title of this paper, now he's published over 213 papers so far, but the title of this paper, All Disease Begins in the parentheses leaky gut. The role of zonulin, this protein, the role of zonulin in the development of chronic inflammatory disease. Now, we know that all diseases are chronic inflammatory diseases, that every disease is a disease of inflammation. The cell is on fire. It's just a question. Is it a brain cell or a kidney cell? Is it gasoline or kerosene? But it's always a fire, always. MS is an inflammatory disease.
Absolutely.
So here we have the head of Harvard's pediatric gastroenterology saying all disease begins in the leaky gut. Well, what about MS? All disease begins in the leaky gut. Well, what about rheumatoid? All disease begins in the leaky gut. Well, what about psoriasis? All disease. Do you get my point? That we don't.
Yes, everything is related.
This is the big picture that we all have to think from when we want to interrupt the development of disease that's going on for us. There is never going to be a pill to fix MS. Excuse me, but there will never be a pill because MS is not a deficiency of a pill. MS is a chronic inflammatory disease. And there are many, many steps over the years that have to occur before you ever get a symptom. But in those early stages, so I'm going to go now to a concept. Well, no, I'll stay with Fasano first. I had these slides and it was well organized, you know.
I'm very sorry.
So Professor Fasano says that there are 5 pillars in the development of all chronic inflammatory diseases, including MS. 5 pillars that hold the disease up. The first is your genetics. Now, you can't do anything about your genetics. That's the deck of cards that you were dealt in life, right? But whether that gene gets turned on or turned off is completely dependent on the next 3. The next 3 are environmental triggers. Things that we're exposed to that activate our genes or quiet down our genes. And the most common source of environmental trigger causing inflammation is what's on the end of your fork. And people don't think about this, but it's what you're putting in the mouth that is the most common source of inflammation in your body. Now, there are other sources. You can't live in a moldy house. You cannot. If you live in a moldy house and your genetics are for your nervous system to be affected, you are not going to get well if you live with mold. And that's very, very common with MS. Very, very common. So the second pillar is environmental triggers. The third pillar is the environmental triggers alter your microbiome, the good and bad bacteria in your gut. So now we know that over 1/3, it's actually 36% of all of the molecules in the bloodstream at any one time. Now your bloodstream is just a highway inside your body, you know, and all the traffic's going in the same direction, right? I mean, there's no lanes of traffic, so everything's bumping into each other, but it's all going the same way.
Absolutely.
36% of all of the molecules in your bloodstream are the metabolites and the proteins. That's like the exhaust of the bacteria in your gut.
Yes.
36% of everything in your bloodstream is what's coming from the bacteria in your gut.
Yes.
Now, why is that? For every message from the brain going down to tell the gut what to do, it's Dr. Michael Gershon at Princeton that taught us this back in 1999. For every message from the brain going down telling the gut what to do, there are 9 messages from the gut going up telling the brain what to do.
Yes.
The ratio is 9-to-1.
9-to-1. Oh my God.
9-to-1. And how does those messages get to the brain? It's the molecules in the bloodstream that are produced by the exhaust of the bacteria.
Okay.
So the control of the hormones in your brain called neurotransmitters,
Right.
all of those neurotransmitters that determine how our brain works, how the brain cells regenerate, how brain cells get destroyed, all of those neurotransmitters, the balance of them is controlled by the messages coming from the gut.
The gut. Okay.
So the more out of balance your gut is, the more the message for inflammation is going up to your brain.
Okay.
Every MS patient needs to rebuild a healthy, diverse microbiome as a component of what it takes to stop the momentum. When you've got a chronic inflammatory disease, it's a boulder going downhill. Just
Right.
rolling downhill faster and faster, right?
Right.
You think there's going to be a pill that's going to stop the boulder? That's never going to happen. The best that you can do is to get a whole bunch of dirt, pour it downstream a little bit more, so that as the boulder comes downhill, it gets tapered off, and then eventually you can go back up to better health. You have to understand this picture when you're diagnosed with MS. There will never be a pill. Now, of course, there's medications to help you function, of course, but it doesn't stop the progression of the disease.
Yes, it doesn't. Yeah.
So it's great to take medication to help you function, but you have to get wise. Where is this coming from? All disease begins in the leaky gut. So genetics, environmental triggers, and it'll take you 6 months to a year to learn what most of the environmental triggers are that are causing inflammation in your brain. You don't learn this in a day. Altered microbiome is number 3, which creates the inflammation in the gut, which creates the intestinal permeability, number 4. Now, what is intestinal permeability? Mrs. Patient, your intestines are a tube. They start at the mouth, go to the other end. One big long tube kind of winds around in there.
Absolutely.
If you think of a donut, if you could stretch a donut out, one big long donut, and if you could look down the donut, that's your digestive tract. It's a big long tube. So when you swallow food, it's not in your body. It's in the tube.
Absolutely, yes.
And it's got to go through the walls of the tube to get into the bloodstream. Well, how does that occur? When you eat foods, they have to be broken down. It's called digestion. Think of a pearl necklace. Protein is a pearl necklace. And the acid in your stomach undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls. And it's your enzymes, digestive enzymes, that act like scissors, snip, 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 smaller and smaller and smaller, until you're down to each pearl of the pearl necklace. That's called an amino acid. Now, the inside of your tube is lined with cheesecloth. So do you know what cheesecloth is?
I have seen in your videos, but I don't know actually.
Okay, cheesecloth, when you make a gravy, you pour the gravy through a cloth so that only the liquid comes through.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's gauze or cheesecloth.
Okay.
So the inside of your lining, your intestinal lining, is lined with cheesecloth. So only really small molecules, after they're snipped down, they can go through the gauze, through the cheesecloth, into the bloodstream.
Okay.
Now your body uses those pearls of the pearl necklace to make new bone cells and brain cells and muscle cells. You can't take big molecules and put them in the bloodstream. They have to be broken down very small.
Yes.
Very small.
Yes.
Intestinal permeability or leaky gut is when you get tears in the cheesecloth. So if you get tears in the lining of the intestine, you eat really good food,
Yes.
but before there's been enough time to break it down, some of the bigger molecules get into your bloodstream.
Okay.
And then your immune system says, whoa, what's this? This is not something I can use to make new brain cells. I better fight this. And now your immune system makes antibodies to chicken or to raspberries or to bananas. It doesn't matter what the food is. If it got through the tears in the cheesecloth into the bloodstream, your immune system, trying to protect you, is going to fight those foods and cause more inflammation.
Okay.
And when people do a blood test to look for food sensitivities, they look at 90 different foods, and it comes back and they're positive to 25 different foods. And they say, oh my God, that's everything I eat. Well, of course it is. Of course it is. Because you got tears in the cheesecloth. Stop eating the food, heal the gut, rebuild the microbiome so you don't have permeability anymore, and then go back and test again. Now you're sensitive to 2 foods, maybe 3. That is a critical concept for people to understand, because all chronic disease is inflammatory.
Yes.
All MS is inflammatory.
Yes.
And so these 5 pillars, so these big molecules get into the bloodstream, and the 5th pillar is the inflammation throughout your body that's determined by your genetics. You know, if you pull at a chain, the chain always breaks at the weakest link. It could be at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys, wherever your genetic weak link is, that's where the chain's going to break. That's determined by your genetics.
Okay.
So the environmental triggers, creating an altered microbiome in the gut, creates intestinal permeability. These big molecules get through into the bloodstream, creates systemic inflammation. That's the mechanism in the development of all chronic inflammatory diseases. So what does that mean? It means that when you're wanting to stop the boulder going downhill, getting worse, getting worse, getting worse, you must address the 3 pillars in the middle of the 5 pillars, right? You can't change your genetics.
You cannot, yes.
And, you know, the systemic inflammation, that's your immune system trying to protect you. Now,
Yes.
why is it when your immune system is trying to protect you, you can get MS? How come you get antibodies to myelin? How does that happen?
Yeah.
The best example that people can understand easily is if we look at the discipline of medicine, dentistry in medicine.
Okay.
Dentists give you antibiotics before they're going to work in your mouth. Why do they do that? When they're working in your mouth and they squirt water in your mouth and you swish it around and you lean over and you spit out the water, there's red water, there's some blood with the water when you rinse your mouth out. They just gave you leaky gums. You got leaky gums. And it takes about 3 days for the leaky gums to heal. Now, in the meantime, you have over 800 different species of bacteria in your mouth. Over 800. Some of them are good guys, some of them are bad guys. So if some of the bad guys, like streptococcus, we hear of strep infections and things like that. If strep gets through the leaky gums into the bloodstream, and if it sets up shop somewhere in your body, because it's in the bloodstream now, and maybe it's going to hang out in your liver or in your gallbladder or somewhere, and if it starts multiplying, you get a strep infection. Now, the immune system is going to make antibodies to fight the strep. And the way the antibodies understand where, because they're in the bloodstream and everything's bouncing around in the bloodstream, everything's bouncing around. How do they identify the strep? They look for a particular protein signature. Okay. So I'm going to say the protein, because proteins are made up of amino acids, I'm just going to say AABCD for the amino acids. But it's like they're looking for orange vests. Anytime they see AABCD, if they see an orange vest in the bloodstream, they fire their chemical bullet. That's really good. That's how our immune system fights bacteria. Right. The problem is the wrap around your nerves called myelin. Yes. That wrap around your nerves, the protein in the myelin includes AABCD, orange vests. Okay. So the antibodies that are looking for orange vests say, oh, look over there, boom, and they fire their chemical bullet at your myelin. Right. Now, and so they do that. That's called molecular mimicry. Okay. Now, in dentistry, because if strep gets in and sets up shop and your immune system fights strep, another tissue that has a lot of orange vests that looks like the strep bacteria signature are the valves of your heart. So the antibodies to strep start to attack the valves of your heart. That's called rheumatic fever, and that will kill you.
Yes, of course.
That is why the dentists give you antibiotics, so that after they give you leaky gums, and if some strep gets into your bloodstream, you've got antibiotics already in your bloodstream to kill the strep, so that it's not going to get a chance to set up house and to multiply, and then your immune system has to make antibodies to strep. Right. So that's the goal, is to eliminate the need for the immune system to make antibodies to strep. So the dentists give you antibiotics preventively. Okay? That's called molecular mimicry. And that happens with MS every single day. And it happens with foods. It happens with gluten. It happens with dairy. It just depends on your genetic vulnerability as to what's going to be the trigger. So the rule is you have to test. You have to test to see, do I have a problem with wheat? Well, I feel fine when I eat wheat. I don't feel bad. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter at all, because the ratio is 8-to-1. For every one person that has gut symptoms when they eat wheat, there are 8 people that don't. They've got brain symptoms or joint symptoms or skin symptoms, but they don't have gut symptoms. So you eat a sandwich or you eat pizza, and I feel fine when I eat wheat. But if the immune system is attacking wheat, then with molecular mimicry, if that's your genetic vulnerability, you get elevated antibodies to myelin basic protein, which kills off your nerves, kills off your nerves, kills off your nerves. And what is it about myelin that makes it so bad when you've got antibodies to myelin? Oh, thank you for all the little hearts. I love seeing the little hearts because it keeps me going. You know, then I know people are listening, and so it keeps me going, right? So
also the wonderful comments that we are having here. Everybody's loving to hear your speech.
oh, look at this! Boom! Thank you so much. That's really nice. You know, it really is my passion to help people understand why they're going downhill. And you have to also understand our doctors are trained to try to stop the symptoms. That's very helpful to stop the symptoms, but that doesn't stop the boulder going downhill. Look at all those. That's so nice. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm of the older generation that we don't see this very often. So thank you so much.
While listening to you, one of the thought which is coming to my mind is, if I had a professor like you, you never know when I could have been a doctor someday.
Yes, yes, yeah. Well, it's my teachers that taught me how important it was to use examples so people can understand very difficult concepts in simple language. And of course, it's much more technical than that. It's much more technical, but this is the basic mechanism. So every time you eat a food that your body is sensitive to, you get more inflammation. And if that inflammation, if your genetic vulnerability is to your nerves, you get MS, or you get Alzheimer's, or you get Parkinson's, or you get dementia. It doesn't matter the symptoms, it's the mechanism that we have to understand. All disease begins in the leaky gut. When you understand that mechanism, then you start to taper this thing. And then you can roll it uphill with the proper diet, nutrition, and get healthier and start functioning better. My wife and I traveled the world, you know, and we 7 countries, and I interviewed the world's best scientists on this topic of autoimmune disease. Because I read their research, so I know, oh, I'm going to Spain to interview Fernandez. Or I'm going to Israel to interview Schoenfeld. And we traveled all over. And I interviewed the specialists. I then interviewed the doctors who were applying the principles that the specialists were talking about. And I asked the doctors to invite in a couple of their patients who had followed the doctor's recommendations, and they had autoimmune diseases. And I'll never forget, just again and again, we put this online for free. It's called Betrayal, the autoimmune disease solution they're not telling you. And it's at thedr.com. That's my website, thedr.com/betrayal. And I'll never forget, you know, the 44-year-old woman in London. She said, you know, I took the tube to come here today for the interview. That's the underground train.
Wow.
And she said, it's a 7-block walk from the train station to here. And I walked. She said, it's no big deal. But then she paused and she got teary-eyed and she said, but it is. And then we show you pictures of her 2 years ago in a wheelchair with MS. She can't walk at all. And she had 7 lesions on her brain. And here she is today, no symptoms, 2 lesions left on her brain. Gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free diet, and started taking some nutrition. But she had mold in her house. She had to get mold out of it. She had to clean the house out, professionally, she had to stop throwing gasoline on the fire.
Okay.
And here we show her to you 2 years later, and we show the MRIs, and there's only 2 lesions left on the brain. And you see that again and again and again. It's called betrayal. And it's at our website for free. We've had over 600,000 people watch this, right? We're in Costa Rica right now. And we went to the organic market here last Saturday for the first time. Okay. And this woman walked up to me. She said, "You're Dr. Tom?" And I said, "Yes." She started crying. And she said, "You saved my life." She had MS. And she watched Betrayal 2 years ago when it came out. And she said, "Look, I could hardly walk. I was using crutches, but look now." And she starts dancing for me. You know, she was like 60 years old, something like that. And I had tears in my eyes. And I said, "Oh, thank you so much. You made my day. That's really great. That's really great." So all of this information I'm telling you is the message of betrayal, the autoimmune disease solution they're not telling you. And that's available at thedr.com/betrayal. And it's also in my book. You can fix your brain.
Fix your brain.
Yes, it's all in here. All of the steps, all of the analogies, all of the visuals. Because when people get diagnosed with a disease like MS, it's very, very scary. It's overwhelming. You don't know what to do because the experts that diagnose the disease are trying to stop the boulder from going downhill. And you cannot stop the boulder from going downhill. You cannot. The best that you can do is taper it so that you slowly start improving, slowly. And then all of a sudden it's got a momentum of its own going uphill because you've changed your lifestyle. That's how you deal with chronic inflammatory diseases.
While listening to you, I had this thought in my mind that when we go to doctors, after having diagnosed with MS, all they do mostly is give us a DMT and say, you should use this. Why don't people actually tell that you have other options also available, like natural things? Look at your diet, change your diet, try to heal us in a very natural way.
That's a really good question, really good. And it's important that people understand that question, really important. So the answer is the medical doctors are not trained in this. They have no training in nutrition, very little. And when you talk to a gastroenterologist, when a person has gastroenterology symptoms, your gut hurts, you got gut disease, they say, for the most part, food has nothing to do with it. What kind of nonsense is that? Of course, what you put down in the tube is going to affect how the tube functions. Of course it is. And now to neurology, there was a study, I had the slides for you in my slide preparation. When a patient sees a doctor for nerve symptoms or neurology symptoms, and the doctor doesn't know what's wrong, the doctor refers the patient to a neurologist.
Yes.
And so you have to wait for weeks often to get in to see a neurologist, and they don't have much time when you get in there, and they give you some short thing, some quick response, and do this. And you go home to do that, and it doesn't work. And so you have to make another appointment with the neurologist because the family doctor can't help you at this point. He's already referred you out.
Yes.
So you go back to see the neurologist again and say, "It's not helping. I'm getting worse." And when they don't know what's wrong, usually they'll try 2 or 3 different medicines to stop the symptoms. And when they don't know what's wrong, if you're persistent, they refer you to a neurology research institution.
Okay.
So the paper that I was going to show you came out of Sheffield, England, a neurology research institution. And what they said is that when the cause of a person's neurological disease is known, the percentage of people that have antibodies to gluten, meaning they're fighting gluten, is 5%.
Okay.
When the cause of a neurological disease is unknown at the Neurology Research Center, it's unknown, the percentage of people with elevated antibodies to gluten is 57%.
Oh,
And when they put them on a gluten-free diet, they often get better. And they don't know why. They don't know. Now we know more science about it, but
of course.
it is so common as a component. It's not the magic cure. It's never the magic cure. But the rule is test, don't guess, test. Because wheat is the #1 food in our diet today in most
Yes.
parts of the world.
Especially India. That's where I belong to.
Yes.
Wheat is the #1 diet here.
Yeah, in the north of India. Yes, because
Yes.
it's very
Yes.
different between the south and in the north.
Absolutely. South is for rice and north is for wheat.
Right. So in the south, they have more kidney problems because the rice has arsenic in it, and arsenic
Yes.
hides in your kidneys. So they've got
Yes.
more kidney disease in the south, they've
Yes.
got more celiac disease in the north.
Yes.
And
But Doctor, very frankly, being belonging to North India, I have not met many people talking about gluten. Whatever I've learned about celiac diseases is by interacting with so many doctors from around the world now. In fact, when I was diagnosed with MS around 8 years back, 9 years back now, when I told my doctor, because I was reading a lot of articles on the internet and I tried everything. I stopped my gluten, I stopped my milk, the dairy products. I stopped like almost everything. I don't even remember what I was eating. I used to be only on raw diet.
yes,
Um, when I went to my doctor after a year, and I told him that I've stopped everything for 1 year. I've not eaten all this, and he was like, "Why?" He said, "It doesn't matter if you are doing fine with the DMTs, and if you eat all these, it's fine." And so I slowly started, but I don't know. But it's just that when I speak to so many doctors like you around the world, and they tell me about natural ways of healing, trust me, I won't do that. Last week I tried smoothie diet and all that stuff, but I want to heal myself naturally. But I'm also scared because maybe I don't have a person physically here to guide me in that direction.
well,
Because
there's
my
a
neurologist.
there
Yeah.
we hosted a conference in India last year,
Okay.
and we had over 400 in attendance and over 4,000 on live stream. Doctors all over India and all over the world.
About celiac disease.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And Ms. Ishi Kholsa, who is the executive director of the Celiac Society of India, she's in Delhi. Very knowledgeable, a wonderful person to interview here because she can talk to people more about the alternatives in India that are available. But the rule though is autoimmune diseases are your immune system. It hasn't gone crazy. It's actually trying to protect you from something, but because of molecular mimicry, the orange vest, and your genetic vulnerability, you develop these symptoms. Someone else with the same exposures and the same sensitivity, the immune system response will develop rheumatoid. Someone else will develop psoriasis. So it's not what I'm telling you is specific to MS, it's specific to the immune system. And it just depends on your genetics and how you've lived your life to this point as to where the weak link in your chain is.
Okay. Doctor, when we talk about gluten, I have one more question to ask you here. So I saw in one of your videos, you had quoted that, we are not ruminants, so we do not do well with processed or grains. We are really not meant to eat them. But also at the same time, you say that increased mortality is more in gluten-free diet than people who are taking gluten. So, what is the
Good,
connection here?
good question. Humans are not designed to eat wheat. Not all grains in general. I don't think I said that. I should not have. If I, that's a misinterpretation about all grains. That's not true, because some grains are good for you,
Okay.
in moderation, but not wheat. Wheat activates. See, Mrs. Patient, you have the same body as your ancestors 5,000 years ago. The same kidneys, the same gallbladder, the same heart, the same lungs, the same immune system. And back then, our ancestors were worried about finding enough food. So they'd find something, the first thing, they smell it. Then they taste a little bit, and then they eat it. If the food had bad bacteria, dangerous bacteria, it's the job of hydrochloric acid in our stomach to kill it, because that acid kills anything.
Right.
But if it did not kill it, the bad bacteria in the food that they were eating, when that food comes out of the stomach into the small intestine, going down the tube, you have sentries standing guard right there to protect you. Those sentries are called toll-like receptor 4. I mean, it's a geek word, I'm sorry. But toll-like receptor 4. They're calm, they're quiet, but they're always there to protect you in case a bad bug comes out of the stomach. They fire their chemical bullets right away, causing inflammation, and they also flip the switch to cause leaky gut, because the leaky gut brings water into the intestines to wash out, to flush out whatever the bad thing is. You get a little diarrhea. That's the job of why leaky gut is not bad for you, that we're supposed to be able to have that permeability sometimes. So the sentry, standing guard, toll-like receptor 4,
Right.
they create the inflammation, and they also turn the switch on for leaky gut. Dr. Maureen Leonard at Harvard, in 2017, she published a study. She read 64 different research papers on this topic. 64. And what she said in her summary, previous studies confirm that all individuals who eat gluten develop transient intestinal permeability. All individuals who eat gluten. So if you are watching this right now, I'm going to assume you're human. And if you're human, you fall under the category of all individuals, which means that whenever you eat wheat, you activate transient leaky gut in everybody. Now, toll-like receptor 4 is the mechanism by which that occurs in all individuals. The problem is that the body misinterprets gluten to be a dangerous bug. And so toll-like receptor 4 gets activated anytime you eat wheat. Within 5 minutes of the wheat coming out of the stomach into the small intestine. 5 minutes. And when you see the videos, it's shocking to see it. Wow, look at that. That is really cool. Wow. I'm a geek and I like seeing that stuff, right? And yes, this includes sourdough breads. Yes, it includes ancient grains. Now, there was one paper that came out that showed that if you ferment the flour, the bread, the dough, with 7 different types of Lactobacillus san franciscus, 7 different types, all of the toxicity is gone. And that was published about 4 years ago, but it's not commercially viable. No one can do that. So all of the sourdough bread that we can make or that we buy, all of the bread, all of the spelt, all of the emmer, the ancient grains, the modern grains, they all activate toll-like receptor 4 in all individuals. That's from Maureen Leonard at Harvard after reading 64 studies. Do you want to argue with her about this? You may not like it. You know, sorry. We'll put it on your tombstone that he liked his pizza, right?
So, yes, doctor. So we understand gluten is inflammatory and it can cause a lot of problems. But what about dairy? I remember there were times when, people used to say that, everyday milk is important for the kids, for everyone to have healthy bones for a good life. Was it only just a commercial, like a gimmick to sell dairy, or how do you take it?
That's a really good question, especially for my friend Ishi Kosa, the director of the celiac site, because she knows all the alternatives for you in India. But the rule of thumb is test, don't guess. And in India, it's much more difficult to do tests, and they're expensive. I know. So if you're not going to do tests, you err on the side of caution, meaning if you have a chronic inflammatory disease, what are the very common triggers that we see often? And then get those out of there. So that's gluten, dairy, and added sugar. Get them out of there. Some people may need to eliminate corn. 50% of celiacs also need to eliminate corn, but not everyone. But if you're not going to do the testing, you err on the side of caution. And so how do you choose your foods? It's called the rainbow diet. You want to eat the colors of the rainbow, the reds and the blues and the purples and the greens and the yellows and the oranges. You want to eat as many different colors every day, because all of those colors, the composition that makes up those colors are called polyphenols. Another geek word, sorry. But those polyphenols, they help protect you from the virus that we're currently dealing with. They turn on the genes for no inflammation or for reduced inflammation across the board. So, and the goal is, and give yourself 2, 3, 4 months, but the goal is 50 different foods per week. 50 foods per week. Yes, every week. And it's not difficult. When you make a salad, you got the greens, that's yellow. Put some tomato in there, that's red. Shred some carrot, that's orange. Slice some cucumber, that's whitish. Put some sprouts in there. And you see you've got 5, 6, 8, 10 different colors just in a salad. And then you can saute some vegetables. It's easy to get 50 different foods per week once you're thinking about it and exploring a little at a time. Most people are somewhere between 10 and 15 foods a week that they eat. Not enough, by far, not enough. Absolutely not. So rainbow diet, gluten-free, dairy-free, added sugar-free.
Okay, that's wow. Oh my God, 50 foods in a week sounds too difficult.
Yeah.
But, yeah, but we have to follow it. Means we have to be very scheduled and systematic in our diet as well.
That's right.
There's one more thing about Instagram, that if we are live for around 60 minutes, it gets disconnected. And if you have time, if you want to continue, we can join back again. So we have 5 minutes to go.
Okay. Let's see. Hang on 1 minute. Let me see my schedule.
As per your schedule, yes.
Oh, my wife took my phone because I don't have Instagram on my phone, and I'm on her phone here. So I don't think I have. I think I can go for another 20 minutes or so. So do you want to disconnect and connect again?
Yes, I think it will be okay. Let's just go for 5 minutes and then it will get disconnected on its own. Then we can connect back.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so I know I can just take a few questions from the audience as well. I can see a lot of questions coming up. So Margot Lamshi has written, is cold tempered food bad for people with MS?
I'm sorry. What type of food?
Cold tempered foods.
Cold tempered food? Like
Yes.
cold food?
Yes, the frozen foods maybe.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. We always want to choose our eating style by how it supports our digestive system. That most of us, we've really beat up our digestive systems over the years. You know, pow, pow, pow. Coca-Cola, sugar, Coca-Cola, sugar, Mountain Dew, candy bars, donuts, blah, 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 blah. And we beat up our digestive system. How do you expect it to work for you? You know, but people didn't know, you know. So most of, especially if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, your digestive system is probably in need of some help. Oh, look at all those little stars that go up there. That's really nice. So your digestive system is probably in need of some help, which means be kind to yourself. Would you put cold food on your arm? How does your skin feel when you do that? What?
Just
Right,
remove it, yeah.
right, and not too hot either. So
Yeah.
it's best to room temperature or a little bit warmer than room temperature, so that it's convenient and comfortable and not stressful to your digestive system.
Okay. You know, I can see comments like Sal has written, I wish you were my doctor.
Thank you.
Everybody's just left loving you. So I can see another question here on the screen by Scorpio.
I see that. I see it.
Yeah.
I see it. I see a question that says, "What about nuts?"
Yes.
So I'll do the nut one first.
Yes.
And yeah, in general, nuts are really good for you, unless you have a sensitivity to nuts. See, the way we've beat up our digestive systems, most of us have some foods that we really should avoid that are good foods. But because of our genetics or how we lived our lives, we have a hard time with certain foods. But in general, nuts are excellent for you to support your immune system, its cardiovascular system. What we do is we buy a pound of many different types of organic nuts. Walnuts, almonds, cashews, because I like the taste of cashews, peanuts, macadamia nuts, and we put them in a big bag or a big bowl, not a bowl, a jar in the freezer to keep them fresh. And, you know, every couple of days, we take a small bowl and just scoop some out and leave them on the counter. And when I walk by, I grab a handful of nuts, a mixture of nuts. One handful a day of a mixture like that reduces your cardiovascular risk and your diabetes risk dramatically. And I've not seen a study that talks about the mixed nuts, but I've seen studies on eating almonds, eating walnuts, eating peanuts, just and 32% reduction in high blood pressure, 27% reduction in cardiovascular disease, heart attacks and strokes. You know, the studies go on and on. So I don't know which one to eat. So I'm going to mix them all together, and I'm just going to eat a handful of the mix.
Okay. What about flax seeds, the pumpkin seeds, and all the kinds of seeds?
We also throw in that jar of nuts, we throw flax seeds, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds in there.
Yeah.
And then you don't grind up the seeds beforehand. When we do smoothies, we'll put the seeds in a little coffee grinder. And then we go, and then pour that into the smoothie. because it's easier to absorb. But when you grind seeds, they start to oxidize right away. If you want to understand what that means, just take some flax seeds, grind them in a coffee grinder, taste some and save some, but taste them, say, oh, those taste really good. 4 hours later, take some fresh flax seeds, grind them in the coffee grinder, and taste them. Yep, that's what they taste like. And then taste the ones from the earlier grind 4 hours ago. You go, ooh, oh, there's a difference. That's oxidation. That causes inflammation in your body.
Oh my God.
So don't grind the seeds ahead of time. Grind them when you eat them if you want to, but not in advance.
Wow. That's quite information. It's an eye-opener. I know for many of the people who are actually following smoothie diet and having seeds like this, because I know many of them are actually grinding, they don't just eat as it is.
Yes.
Doctor, it's almost 60 minutes since I'm live, so I'll disconnect and then we can rejoin after a minute.
Okay, and then I'll come back the same way we came
Yes.
in. Okay.
Same way.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, it's Dr. Tom O'Brien. I want to get this message to you. In 2013, I decided that I needed to come up with a methodology. That if you leave food in plastic containers in the refrigerator or not, the next day that food has phthalates in it. And when you eat the food, you're getting more phthalates, environmental triggers that your immune system, trying to protect you, goes after, and because of molecular mimicry, it may attack your brain. So that's phthalates. But there's so much nail polish that the phthalates in nail polish are in your bloodstream in 5 minutes. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach out of nail polish into your bloodstream are toxic to humans. There is no evidence whatsoever.
Okay.
But this stuff accumulates in your body. Give me 20 years of a little girl that's putting nail polish on. Now she's 25. Now she's 28, maybe she's 30. She's been doing this for 25 years. Now she gets pregnant. Now, but she's got all these chemicals in her body. 2017, Chicago. 346 pregnant women. They checked the urine in the 8th month of pregnancy. How much phthalates did these women have in their urine? And there's hundreds and hundreds of phthalates, and they measured 5. How much, what quantity of phthalates was in the urine of these women in the 8th month of pregnancy? Okay. They categorized them in fourths: the lowest, the next one, the third, and the highest. Then they followed the offspring of these pregnancies for 7 years. Okay. And when the children turned 7 years old, they did Wechsler IQ tests on them, the official IQ test. Okay. This was every child whose mother was in the lowest or was in the highest quartile of phthalates in urine in pregnancy, compared to the children whose mothers were in the lowest quartile. Every child in the highest quartile, their IQ was 7 points lower. 6.7 to 7.4 points lower. Now that doesn't mean anything to anybody until you understand that a 1-point difference in IQ is noticeable. A 7-point difference in IQ is the difference between a child working really hard, getting straight A's in school, no evidence, but they accumulate in your body. That's why, and every newborn child in America today, when they do the studies, it's at least 200. One study showed 280 chemicals in children's umbilical cord blood at birth that are not supposed to be there. Okay. Mom is a walking sewage dump. And the result, and that's why autism is going like this. That's why Alzheimer's is going like this, because the amount of toxic chemicals in our body. That's why autoimmune diseases are going like this. You have to identify the environmental triggers that are setting off the inflammation in your body. Because it's going down, the only way you're going to do this is to identify the environmental triggers. That is the only way.
Doctor, then this way, we are using a lot of things. We're using plastic wrappers to store our sandwiches.
Right.
We are using like you said, the coffee mug lid, which is plastic. We're even using aluminum foil to wrap things. There's so many things which are toxic in our own kitchen, and unknowingly we are taking them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because we've all grown up believing these things were safe, because that's what they tell you.
Yes.
So I've got slides now, and from the 1950s, if you look at the newspaper articles, they were telling us that the radiation, don't worry about the above ground nuclear blasts in Nevada. It's safe. Don't worry about it. It was safe. Don't worry about it. That was in 1950. In 1970, they were telling us, don't worry about cigarette smoking. It's safe. In 1980s, they were telling us, don't worry about deep fried foods and margarines. They're safe. In the 1990s, they started telling us, don't worry about electromagnetic pollution. It's safe. And so anyway, that's what we're up against. And the whole world, the people of your generation, all think that their environment is safe in their home. The kitchen cabinets and the bathroom cabinets, if they're not solid wood, they're made from press board. Press board is soaked in formaldehyde. Formaldehyde outgasses into the air for years. The sheets that you sleep on and the blankets on your bed are soaked in flame retardant chemicals. The flame retardant chemicals outgas into the air after 20, 30, 40 washings. There's still residues of the chemicals that are outgassing into the air. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of chemicals that outgas into the air is toxic to humans. Of course there's not. But this stuff is accumulative in your bodies. Never in history have we been exposed. No human has any protective mechanisms from all of this. I saw a question come through earlier. Now, someone said, I believe in vaccines. I think vaccines are very wise. I don't know that we'd be here if we didn't have all the vaccines that we have in the world. I don't think vaccines necessarily are a bad thing, but this one that they're rushing through, they usually take years to develop, and they're jumping through so many, skipping corners, and just read the science. And hundreds of scientists are extremely concerned about what's happening right now. And they publish their papers, and they have to be careful of how they say it, because it gets pulled. If it goes against the common line, it gets pulled. But we've never had this amount of toxic exposure in history. Humans do not have any protection against this. We have no protection against trichloroethylene. We have no protection against benzene. If you put the fuel in your car, do you sometimes smell the fuel while you're doing it?
Yes.
That's benzene. Benzene kills your brain cells. When you're smelling it, it's going up through your nose, right to your brain, killing brain cells, killing brain cells, killing brain. Well, I don't feel bad when I smell gas. Well, that's because it isn't killing enough cells to really be noticeable. If you've got, I'll make up a number, you've got 10 billion brain cells. I made up a number. Every time you pump gas and you smell the gas, you kill off 5,000 against 10 billion. You don't feel anything. But give me 20 or 30 years of once a week smelling benzene. Now you got a problem. It's like, wake up, world. Wake up, world. That's why you have to read this book. You Can Fix Your Brain, is because this just makes sense. And when you start reading this and you do an OMG again and again and again, oh my God. And I give you over 350 studies in the book. So anything I say, there's the reference. Go get the study and check it out for yourself. And you will see, wow, this is accurate. Wow, this is accurate. It's like, wake up, world.
Doctor, it's like some things are just not in control. For example, I'll give an example. The place where I stay in, like Mumbai, it's in the heart of the city, South Mumbai, which is the poshest area in Mumbai. There, I'm living, which is very close to the chemical factory. I know it's harmful.
Yeah.
I know it's scary, it's dangerous, but because Mumbai is so crowded and so expensive, and we have to have a house somewhere, a good place to live in. We can't help it. We just can't. Now we are even talking about 5G technology, and earlier we were talking about 4G. We know 5G is going to be harmful to all the human race, but that is coming up. Something control.
It's overwhelming. It's truly overwhelming. And that's why the only way that I know that anyone can be successful is 1 hour a week. Just 1 hour a week. You just learn one little thing. So when you learn about the plastic storage containers, you go, I don't know in India, but in my book, I've got 3 URLs for glass storage containers. So you go to mileskimball.com or Amazon or whatever the third one was. You say, oh, those are, I like those. And you order 3 round ones and 2 square ones and 1 for pie. And you pay with the credit card, you hit send. You're done. It took an hour. You're done for the week. But never again will you poison your family with minute amounts of phthalates. And then next week, you go to houseplants, because we talk in the book about what houseplants absorb the toxins in the air. And then you get some houseplants. And then next week, you start the habit, you only run the dishwasher at night when everybody is sleeping, because the dishwasher is watertight, but not airtight. And that high temperature of the water with the toxic chemicals and the dishwashing stuff that you're using, you're breathing those toxic chemicals. So you only run it at night when there's no one in the kitchen, right? And better to get healthier detergents to use. But you have to learn all these little steps, one little thing at a time. One. It's the only way that you can be successful. And in 6 months, you got this. You've changed so many things in 6 months just by doing one baby step at a time. And if you've got MS, then you might do 1 hour twice a week or 1 hour 3 times a week. The goal is not to make yourself crazy, right? That you do this at a pace that is not going to be creating more anxiety.
Absolutely. Thank you, doctor, so much for the for all your advices. So fix your brain. 1 hour a week is something we all should stick to. And those who have not got this copy, please order on Amazon.com. I'm going to do that for myself today, for sure. And let's make a difference in our life.
You know, thank you for saying that. That really is the goal here. You know, I've just given you guys about an hour and a half of my time, which I'm very happy to do. I'm going to ask all of you to give 5 minutes of your time and send a message to someone you love who would benefit from listening to this, and send them the link, you know, to the Instagram thing so that they can go watch it. And just take 5 minutes, you know, spread the word. This is not complicated. These basic things will make the difference. I do a Facebook Live every Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific in the US time zone. That's 7 o'clock New York time zone. And it's on Facebook, thedr.com. And we just talk for an hour every week. You know, it's all free. So come join us if you wish. Go to my website, thedr.com, and just start listening to videos. Just get yourself educated a little bit at a time. Oh, thank you. Someone said already have. Thank you so much with the hearts. Thank you so much. That's great. But share the message, you know, share the message. Let's help make this Instagram site for MS a very busy site, so that more and more people can hear this information.
Thank you so much, doctor. You know, with your help, you know, we can actually achieve a goal of spreading awareness. Today, I actually learned one more thing. When I started the page on Twitter first, then Facebook, and then on Instagram, my goal was actually to educate people about MS. But while speaking to you today, my goal, I got a second goal, which is about natural healing, which how it is so important. And if the doctors do not know about natural healing or do not promote it, how the doctors should also follow that. And that's the second goal I've got in my life now.
Well, thank you so much. You know, I used to have that same concept, but, you know, I've been doing this now for 40 years. And I'm on the faculty of the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I'm always on stage teaching doctors. And the ones who come to our events, they are so fed up with the healthcare system that they are stuck in, they want to learn something new. And then they get very excited again because this all makes sense. It just makes sense. As opposed to trying to stop this boulder that's going downhill, it makes sense that you need to taper it and then slowly bring it back up by reducing the inflammation, right? But doctors aren't trained in this. And if you're expecting to get good counsel from your doctor who's not trained in this, you're going to be very disappointed. That's why you spend 1 hour a week. And if it makes sense to you, if it makes common sense, you spend 1 hour a week and you will learn for yourself like that every week.
Yes, we have to try. We have to do things ourselves to help
Yes.
ourselves. Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you so much, Doctor,
Thank
for
you so
the
much.
time. Namaste from India.
Thank you so
And
much.
it was really great having you here. Everybody loved you, and we are very, very honored that you agreed for this wonderful session. And thank you for sharing all the wonderful advices you have done today.
Thank you, and thank you for the great work that you're doing. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye. Oh my God, I'm just honored to speak to Dr. Tom directly, and he is fabulous, isn't it? I mean, I've never, stressed me when I was going to join the session. I was so nervous that I'm going to talk to a very senior doctor and everything, but he made me so comfortable, and I'm sure even you guys really, really liked the session and really appreciated Dr. Tom's generosity in helping us and answering the questions and clearing so many doubts that we have had till now. And I have to again, of course, say thank you to you guys. It's because of your support and love that we are able to get such good and amazing doctors. And yes, we are helping each other, and such fabulous doctors are helping us and guiding us in the right direction. Thank you so much, everybody. And I know some of you from India are still awake. It's 3 a.m. here. So let's get some sleep. And for the rest of you who are in UK and US, have a good evening and have a good day, rest of you. We'll meet again next week with another session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.